We all want to change our lives. We all have the list in our heads. Eat better, sleep better, spend less, read more, stop scrolling at 11 p.m. Get back in shape, be more patient with the people we love. Finish the thing we keep starting. We attack the list sometimes, for a week, for a month, and then it slides back every time into roughly the same shape it was in before. We blame discipline, the motivation, the season, the schedule, the stress. None of those are the real reason. The real reason is that we are trying to change the wrong number of things at once. You don't have a discipline problem, you have a leverage problem. Most people, when they want to change their life, attack 10 habits at the same time. They start the diet, the workout, the journal, the budget, the morning routine, the new sleep schedule, all in the same week. The brain, faced with 10 simultaneous changes, runs out of energy to maintain any of them, and the whole system collapses back to the old defaults within a few weeks. The collapse is not a character flaw, it is a mechanical certainty. You don't change your life by changing everything. You change your life by changing one specific thing that quietly changes the others for you. That's not a productivity tip. That's not a motivation hack. That's not a "you need to want it more" issue. That is a leverage error, the wrong unit of change. And until you see it, every January, every Monday, every clean slate moment will end the same way it ended last time. Today we are going to learn the one concept that fixes this. The concept Charles Duhigg researched for years and built an entire book around in The Power of Habit. The concept neuroscientists at MIT have tracked inside the basal ganglia of living brains. The concept so simple that 95% of people will read about it, agree it makes sense, and then go right back to attacking 10 habits at once next Monday. This isn't motivation, this is mechanics. And by the end of this video, you'll either install the one habit or you'll know exactly why you didn't. Most people think a habit is just a behavior you repeat. It isn't. The mechanic says a habit is a loop, 3 parts, in a fixed order, hardwired into a deep, ancient part of your brain. There is a cue, there is a routine, there is a reward. Once that loop runs enough times, it stops requiring conscious thought. It runs in the background like a script. And here's the part that almost no one knows. Some habits, when installed, don't just sit in their own loop. They start to rewrite the loops next to them. Duhigg calls these keystone habits. They are the highest leverage point in the entire system. Change 1. Watch the rest reorganize themselves around it. It worked when humans first started forming routines around the fire. It works today in MIT labs and SEAL training. It will work in 100 years. Because the basal ganglia, the part of your brain that runs habits, has not changed in any meaningful way for tens of thousands of years. And the leverage point has one location. The one habit is this: move your body every day on purpose. Not a perfect workout, not a planned program, not the optimized routine you've been researching for 3 months. A walk counts. 20 minutes of any deliberate movement counts. The form matters less than the daily repetition. Before the perfect plan, before the gym membership, before the right shoes, the right app, the right coach. Before anything else, every day your body moves on purpose. That's it. That's the entire mechanic. No tricks, no optimization. Just one keystone habit, installed first before anything else. It sounds too small to matter. That's exactly why it works. And that's exactly why almost nobody trusts it enough to actually do it. Let me show you what's actually happening underneath. Because once you see it, you won't be able to unsee it. Number 1, the keystone effect. Watch what Duhigg's research actually found. When researchers studied people who successfully changed their lives in dramatic ways, they expected to find people who had overhauled multiple habits at once. They didn't find that. What they found, repeatedly, was that successful changers usually started with one specific habit, often a small one, often something that looked unrelated to the goal they were chasing. And after that single habit was installed, the rest of their life began to shift, almost without conscious effort. The most documented keystone habit in the research is regular exercise. People who started exercising regularly, the studies showed, also began eating better. Not because anyone told them to. Their food choices drifted on their own toward things that supported how they now felt. They started sleeping better because their body was demanding deeper rest. They became more patient at work because the same nervous system that was being trained to push through resistance in a workout was being trained to handle stress in meetings. They spent less impulsively because the part of the brain that practices delayed gratification, the prefrontal cortex, was being strengthened every time they chose to move when they didn't feel like it. One habit. 5 or 6 measurable downstream effects. None of them attack directly. This is leverage. Most habits are flat. They affect only their own domain. Keystone habits are vertical. They reach into other parts of the system and rearrange them. An exercise in the data is the cleanest, most reliable keystone habit ever measured. You don't change 10 habits to change your life. You change one keystone and the other 9 start drifting in your direction on their own. Number 2. The habit loop. Here is the architecture underneath the habit you're trying to install. Duhigg, drawing on neuroscience research from MIT, mapped every habit to the same 3-part structure. There is a cue, the trigger that tells your brain to start the loop. There is the routine, the behavior itself. And there is the reward, the payoff your brain registers at the end. Cue, routine, reward. That loop, repeated enough times, gets handed off from the conscious part of your brain to the basal ganglia, the deep, automatic part. Once that handoff happens, the habit runs without you. It becomes nearly impossible to stop even when you want to, because the conscious part of your brain is no longer in charge of it. This is why willpower fails. Willpower is a function of the conscious brain. The conscious brain runs on glucose and gets tired. The basal ganglia doesn't. So the moment your conscious effort drops, the old loops, the ones that have been automated for years, take back over. The fix is not to use more willpower. The fix is to install a new loop until it gets handed off to the basal ganglia, the same way the old ones did. To install the exercise keystone, you need all 3 parts, a consistent cue. The same time, the same trigger every day. The routine kept simple enough that you can do it on a bad day, and the reward registered immediately after the routine, so the brain learns to crave the routine for the reward. Almost everyone who fails at exercise fails because they only built 1 or 2 parts of the loop. They had a routine but no cue, so they forgot. Or they had a cue but no reward, so the brain never started craving it. The loop is 3 parts. All 3 are required. Once the loop is built, the basal ganglia takes it over. And the moment that happens, you stop having to decide every morning whether to exercise. The decision is already made by a part of your brain that isn't tired and isn't asking. Number 3, the small wins engine. Here is the part of the research that almost no one talks about. The psychologist Charles Duhigg studied why some movements, organizations, and personal transformations succeed when bigger, better-funded ones fail. What he found was that success rarely came from a single dramatic action. It came from what he called small wins, tiny, specific, completed events that gave the brain a sense of forward motion, which then made the next, slightly larger action feel possible. A small win is what your nervous system uses to update its self-image. The body that finished a 20-minute walk today is, at a deep neurological level, no longer the body that doesn't exercise. That single completed loop has rewritten a small piece of the identity, and identity is what the brain uses to choose every future action. The next morning, the brain looks at itself and asks, "What does someone like me do?" And the answer has shifted by a fraction of a degree in the right direction. This is why exercise specifically works as a keystone. Every workout is a small win you can verify with your own body. You either moved or you didn't. There is no ambiguity. Compare that to be more disciplined or be a better person, which produce no clear small wins because there is no measurable end state. The brain cannot register what it cannot measure. You don't change your identity through declarations. You change it through small wins your nervous system can verify. Number 4, the identity shift. Here's the part nobody talks about. Installing a keystone habit isn't just a behavior change, it's an identity rewrite. The day exercise stops being something you do and starts being something you are, the entire architecture of your decisions changes underneath you. A non-exerciser's question is, do I feel like working out today? A person whose identity has shifted asks, what does someone like me do at this hour? The first question depends on mood. Mood is unstable, so the answer changes day to day, and the habit collapses on bad days. The second question depends on identity. Identity is stable, so the answer stays the same regardless of mood, and the habit survives the bad days. Duhigg's research showed this clearly. People who successfully installed exercise as a long-term habit almost always reported, in interviews, that at some point during the first 6 months, the way they thought about themselves shifted. They stopped saying, "I'm trying to work out more." They started saying, "I'm someone who exercises." That sentence, repeated quietly inside their own head, did more work than any motivational technique. This is also why the cascade happens. Once you become someone who exercises, the brain starts running consistency checks across the rest of your life. Someone who exercises probably eats reasonably well. Someone who exercises probably sleeps. Someone who exercises probably handles stress without spiraling. The brain wants the rest of your behaviors to match the new self-image, and it begins, automatically, to pull them in that direction. That pull is uncomfortable sometimes. That discomfort is not a problem. That discomfort is the new identity installing itself. Number 5. Why your brain fights this. If keystone habits are so powerful, and the research is this clear, why doesn't everyone install them? Because your brain is wired to choose comfort over compounding. The basal ganglia, the part of your brain that runs habits, doesn't care whether your life is improving over years. It cares whether the next 10 minutes will be more pleasant than the last 10. So when you face the moment of doing the workout or skipping it, the brain runs an instant calculation. Workout equals discomfort, sweat, effort, time. Skipping equals immediate relief. The math on a single-day timescale almost always favors skipping. The compounding effect of the keystone, the cascade into eating, sleep, work, and relationships, takes weeks to show up. The brain cannot see weeks. It can only see now. So every morning, every cue, the same calculation runs, and on most days, the immediate reward option wins. This is why people start exercising in January and stop by February. The compound benefits haven't shown up yet. The discomfort has shown up every single day. The brain, choosing on a daily timescale, makes the rational short-term decision and the disastrous long-term one. Willpower won't save you here. Willpower is finite. The cue fires every day, and willpower can lose 40 mornings out of 45, even when you genuinely want to change. The fix is not to fight your brain. The fix is to make the loop so small, so frictionless, that the immediate cost drops below the brain's threshold for resistance. Which brings us to the next mechanic. Number 6. The minimum viable loop. Here is the move that makes the keystone install. You don't start with the perfect workout. You start with the smallest version of the loop that still counts. Duhigg's research and Stephen Guise's later work on the same problem both pointed to the same finding. The size of the routine matters less than the consistency of the loop. A 2-minute movement done every day at the same cue will install faster and last longer than a 1-hour workout done 3 times a week. The brain is not building strength in those first weeks. It is building the loop. The size of the routine can grow once the loop is automatic. It cannot grow before. So the install looks like this. Pick a cue you already have. Right after coffee. Right before showering. Right when you close the laptop at the end of the workday. Attach the smallest version of the routine to it. A walk. A short body weight set. 5 minutes of stretching. Whatever you can do on your worst day when you're tired and unmotivated and stressed. That is the version that matters. Then, immediately after, log the small win. A check on a calendar, a note in an app, a tally on a piece of paper. The brain needs to register that the loop closed. That's the reward. For the first 30 days, do not increase the routine. Do not optimize it. Do not chase intensity. Your only job is to never break the loop. Same cue, same routine, same reward. Every day. Boring on purpose. Most people fail because they make the routine too big in week 1 and the loop dies in week 3. The skilled make the routine small enough that the loop survives the bad weeks, and then expand the routine only after the loop has been handed off to the basal ganglia. That handoff usually happens between week 6 and week 12. After that point, missing a day starts to feel wrong, the way skipping a meal feels wrong. That feeling is the signal that the loop is now running on its own. This is the part where you stop being someone who tries to exercise and become someone who does, automatically, without negotiating with yourself every morning. Number 7. The cascade. Let's run the timeline. Week 1 feels like nothing. The routine is small. The reward is small. Nothing visible has changed in your body, your mood, or your life. You'll be tempted to give up because the math doesn't seem to be working. Month 1 is when something subtle starts. You notice you're sleeping slightly better. You notice that on the days you moved, your evening felt less heavy. The loop is closing more easily now. The basal ganglia is starting to take over. You no longer have to argue with yourself for 10 minutes before doing it. Month 3 is when the cascade begins. Without consciously deciding to, you start eating slightly differently. You drink more water. You go to bed earlier. You catch yourself in moments of stress and breathe through them instead of reacting. None of this was on a list. None of it was attacked directly. It is the keystone pulling the rest of your habits into alignment with the new identity. Month 6 is where the cascade becomes visible to other people. Your energy is different, your skin is different, the way you carry yourself is different. People start commenting. They ask what you've been doing. The honest answer is small. You started moving every day, that's it. The rest happened on its own. Year 1 is where it becomes structural. The exercise habit is no longer something you do. It is something you are. And underneath that one habit, a quiet realignment has happened across your eating, your sleep, your finances, your work output, your relationships. You did not change 10 things. You changed 1. The other 9 drifted with it. Year 5 is where the math becomes absurd. 5 years of one keystone habit is not a fitness routine. It is a different life, different body, different defaults, different identity. And it traces back to one decision. The decision to stop trying to fix everything at once and to install the one loop that quietly rewrites everything else. The choice. Here's where you are now. You know about the keystone. You know about the loop. You know why your brain fights the install, and you know how to make the loop small enough to survive the resistance. You know the cascade. You know the timeline. What you do next is the only variable left. Most people will close this video, agree the framework makes sense, and tomorrow morning they will not move on purpose. They will plan to start Monday. The Monday will become next Monday. The next Monday will become next month. And in 5 years, the same conversation will happen with someone else's video. The basal ganglia will still be running the old loops because nothing was installed to replace them. The mechanic will keep doing exactly what it was designed to do because mechanics don't care whether you understand them. They just run. Or you can do something different. Today. Not next Monday. Today. Pick a cue you already have. Attach a 2-minute movement to it. Log the small win. And do it again tomorrow on the same cue before anything in your life is ready. Once the loop installs, the cascade does the rest. If this video shifted something, leave it a like. Subscribe to Living in Atoms. We break down the mechanics behind the systems running your life, one at a time. And share this with one person who needs to hear it, because the people around you are running their old loops right now, whether they know it or not. You don't change your life by changing everything. You change your life by installing the one habit that changes everything else for you. The keystone is the secret. The loop is the lock. And the door has always been open.